Welcome back to the Saints and Alumni Show right here on WBCR 88.3 The Saint. I'm your host this week, Brandon Murphy, class of 2017 from the Office of Alumni Engagement at Siena. And this week I am joined by members of the rugby community, Joe McCrudden, class of 1987, George Durney, class of 1985, and Greg Matthew, who is the Siena rugby coordinator here at Siena College. This week, we're talking about the history of Siena Rugby, the progression of it through the years, and the upcoming celebration of the 50th anniversary and the important fundraising campaign behind that. A reminder to everyone listening today that there's a few ways to listen to the Saints and Alumni Show podcast, a bi-weekly show highlighting our Siena Saints here on WBCR 88.3, Apple and Spotify podcasts, iHeartRadio, and then you can subscribe to the Alumni Engagement YouTube channel to watch the complete selection of shows. There's a lot to talk about today in just about 20 to 25 minutes. So for those listening who are used to, getting down to the nitty gritty about campus life and majors and campus activities, just be prepared. We're going to paint that picture pretty quickly and then really dive deep into all things Siena Rugby, so listeners have a full understanding on why this fundraising campaign is so important to the community. But first, officially welcome all of you to the podcast. I know it was about a year ago that we had you on a Zoom event, but now we get to reach a broader audience today. So Joe, I'll begin with you. Can you just briefly introduce yourself to the Siena community and the affiliation that you have with Siena Rugby and the capacity that you work in as a club leader?
Sure. Well, first of all, Brandon, thanks for having us on. It's, exciting times for Siena Rugby, no doubt. As you said, I was a graduate of in 1987, and I guess you could say that, where I was going to school was never up for debate. Siena was the only school I applied to. My dad went to Siena. Matter of fact, he's in the Sports Hall of Fame at Siena. 3 out of 4 of my siblings went to Siena. So my father-in-law went to Siena, met my wife Donna at Siena. So we have a real strong family connection, and that's continued over the years. Like most of us back then, I don't think I ever saw a rugby match or even knew the rules before I got to Siena, but met some of the guys. And once you start playing, you're just hooked. It's such a fun sport. And one of the themes that you continue to hear, which is so true, is that it's a brotherhood. And without a doubt, it's one of the tightest communities on campus. So it just made the experience there so enjoyable.
And now I work with one of your family members, Claire, and it's always great to kind of continue to hear all of the McCrudden athletic stories and Siena stories, every now and then at Siena. And George, you have same affiliation with the Siena rugby program, and now you work in a leadership capacity with the community as well. Can you introduce yourself to the listeners today?
Sure. As you said, 85. So it's been, I was thinking about it today, it's been 42 years of continual involvement with the program. And I think Joe said it best, the best friends I have, we've been together 42 years and still talk on a weekly basis. So there was some great memories, and Siena Rugby created some memories that made the entire college experience far richer. When I think back, 1985, we took the team to Ireland. So at that time, I don't think I had ever been out of New York State. So, and neither had most of the players. So to take a trip to Ireland and see a different culture and obviously play some rugby over there was an incredible memory. Winning the upstate championship in 85. And at that time, that was kind of the pinnacle of upstate rugby. And I look at some of the programs that we beat, or some of the ones today, like Cortland, URI. So those are just all great memories. And I've been, blessed to be involved from starting with, like Joe, we started with a golf tournament, the scholarship at 9/11 really kicked things off, putting the pitch in. And obviously all of us continue to look for ways to give back.
And there's only ever been one other time we've had 3 guests on the show. We had one on it in June, and I know you guys are going to live up to the hype. So I want to introduce Greg Matthew, our 3rd guest on the show today. Welcome, and can you introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yeah, hi, Brendan. Yes, so my name is Greg Matthew. I'm the rugby coordinator here at Siena. My role really is to oversee both the men's and the women's programs. I kind of take charge when it comes to the recruitment and the admissions process for the rugby students. and generally just making sure that the kind of programs are running smoothly, connected with the alumni, and generally going the direction we want them to go in.
And we really could do a 12-week long semester class on Siena Rugby. I know we have a few teachers that might opt in to do that here on the show today, but we're going to cut it down into a few 12-minute segments. And I want to begin first with Joe and have him provide a little bit of the perspective and history around Siena Rugby in those early years. When did we first have it here on campus, and what were some of the highlights in the very beginning, Joe?
Yeah, Brandon. So, obviously we're celebrating our 50th anniversary. So 1973, the club was formed. And in talking to some of the guys back then, it was really formed by guys who were playing other sports, football, lacrosse, etc. And they got together with some leaders from ROTC. And, the ROTC leaders have really been instrumental in not only growing but guiding the program over the years. Captain Stats, Sergeant Martin, Captain Myers were all coaches and very instrumental. And after those first couple of years, then it became where people were looking to play just rugby and then coming to school and finding the rugby program, and it started growing from there. Other people over the years, Peter Keogh was a coach and a mentor for years, and Father Kevin Tortorelli. You can't really have a conversation about Siena Rugby without talking about Father Kevin Tortorelli. There's a scholarship there now, but he was our rugby chaplain and, really just looked after the students. And, back when the program was growing, he was one of the big supporters on campus. And, that was important to keep things going in the right direction. The women's program was formed in the early 80s, took a hiatus, and then was revived again in the early 2000s and has been, going strong ever since. Over the years, there's been, many upstate tournaments that have been won by the clubs, as George mentioned, but it was really about 5 years ago when there was a concerted effort to take the program to the next level. And it was some key alumni, getting together with the college and, kind of putting a plan together. And, Greg was being modest, but, without a doubt, the most important step was hiring Greg as our rugby coordinator. He's obviously knows the game. He's, able to kind of, keep all the teams going in the right direction. He's a great ambassador for the program and also a great recruiter, which is, clearly obvious based on the success over the last couple of years. So, that's really when things kicked off, and, the future is bright for sure.
And we've got just about 5 minutes left today in the first segment until we go ahead and get to commercial break. So I wanted to touch on how strong the Siena alumni community is. I remember just 3 years ago, my first rugby tournament that I did with all of you, everyone's putting down their nicknames, and I have no idea any of these nicknames that I want to golf with, but everybody knows the nicknames, and everybody has stayed so close together, as George mentioned, 42 years later, still talking to one another. Can you, Joe, talk a little bit about how Alumni Weekend came about and the mission behind Alumni Weekend for rugby?
Sure. Well, we always wanted to get together, so there was always alumni games, played. Again, the alumni would come back and play against students, and that went on for years. And it was just a way for everybody to get back together because we enjoyed spending time together. Make a connection with the students, and that was something we actually did it twice a year. We did it in the winter and the summer. But it was really after the unfortunate events of 9/11 that, things became much more coordinated and organized. We formed a scholarship, as George mentioned, and that was fully funded in about a year. So the alumni really stepped up. We added the golf tournament on Friday, which was a great way to people to come back, get together with their friends, enjoy a day of golf. And, over the years, the proceeds have been used for so many, great things in the community. We started out, working towards the scholarship, but then we've given to Saints Alive on the Siena campus, the ARC renovation project. We've bought books for the library. We helped some professors out on field trips. Whatever was needed, there was money there. And people love the fact that they know that their contributions are going towards important items on the campus. And then one of the things we have done and continue to this day is we help buy presents for families at Christmas, and the alumni actually go out and shop for Catholic family charities and deliver the gifts. So that's something that means a lot to the guys. The Kelly Dugan Scholarship, which is the women's scholarship. We have contributions are made every year from the golf tournament for that scholarship. So just, so many great things. And then the other, probably, our largest contribution was the rugby pitch. And, in addition to bringing Greg on board, building that pitch on campus was really the foundation towards, building the program and taking it to the next level.
And we got just about 2 minutes left until we have to cut to commercial break. Rugby Alumni Weekend used to be in the spring. It's now in the fall. It's going to be in September of this year as well. And we're going to be adding the 50th celebration after the games on Saturday. Joe, can you provide a little insight on what to expect during that 50th celebration?
Sure. So it's September 22nd and 23rd. The golf outing will be on the 22nd. And then we all go to the Ruck Friday night. And then Saturday will be a full slate. And we're really excited about the communication we've had because so many people are coming back. We have a core group, probably 100 people that come back every year. This is going to go to another level, but there'll be a mass in the morning. We'll have both the men's and women's teams will play matches, and then we'll have some sort of alumni match, and then kick off our big 50th anniversary celebration where we're going to recognize the original teams, recognize some of the coaches for both the men's and women's over the years, distinguished alumni who have, built the program, recognize the team, and then obviously give Greg an opportunity to, kind of do a State of the Union to bring everybody up to speed on where the program is and where we're going.
And for everyone listening today, when we come back from commercial break, we're going to begin with Greg and a State of the Union on the program, and then dive a little bit into why it is now so important to support the rugby programs and the new scholarship fund and that campaign behind that. Stay with us. We'll be right back here on WBCR 88.3 The Saint. Welcome back to the Saints and Alumni Show right here on WBCR 88.3 The Saint. I'm your host this week, Brandon Murphy, class of 2017 from the Office of Alumni Engagement. And this week I am joined by Joe McCrudden, class of 87, George Joni, class of 1985, our rugby alumni leaders, and Greg Matthew, Siena Rugby coordinator. We just wrapped up talking about the history of Siena Rugby and the progression of it. And now we're going to get into a little bit of the state of the program and the fundraising campaign ahead of the next couple of years. Greg, we just wrapped up a great season of 15s for the men's and the women's here at Siena. And the NCR, the National Collegiate Rugby, which is kind of the governing body of college rugby, assessed the men's program and decided that they can compete at the Division I level in the playoffs. Can you give us a little bit of a recap over the last 2 to 3 years on the men's program, where they've been competing, and the women's program and how their growth is going?
Yeah, sure. So starting with the men's, obviously, Siena hired me 4 years ago to basically start that development. And, COVID plays a large part in our projection of where we went, in that when other teams kind of dissipated and kind of broke up and had to kind of rebuild, we took that down period to really accelerate the program. So we went in a completely different direction, which was part of a recruitment drive, and kind of getting everything sorted in the background to make sure we could run the program successfully. That really culminated within that first year in 2021 with the national championship win down in Houston, Texas. And I think that may have not taken people in the inner circle by surprise. We kind of had a real good feeling about that year, but it took the general community by surprise that we could accelerate things that quickly. Obviously, that kind of gained us a fair amount of national attention, all for the good, some bad, but mainly for the good, which then allowed us to start really building and pushing the program on the men's side into the athletic department and having a real strong strength and conditioning program and, other aspects behind the scenes. That kind of brought us to 2022, where we had then the opportunity to go up the league. So we were in a division D1 AA, which is an NCR second division conference. That is a 4-division jump in 1 year. And then within 2 games within that season, the decision was made that we would then go into the Division 1 playoff. So culminating in a 5-league division jump in 1 year. So, that's really driven where we're at as a program. To be a Division 1 program so quickly is certainly excellent for us. It's kind of taken us the direction we wanted to go at. We obviously played that playoff game and we were unsuccessful, but very close unsuccessful in our very first Division 1 game. So we're very positive about the future of the men's program. Very positive that we're on the right track and kind of have created a scenario where we will be successful at Division 1 level. And we're certainly not going to kind of look at this as a participation. We want to win a national championship at Division 1. And I think we're definitely going the right way about it with the major support from the alumni. That's really been the base to make sure that we have everything we need to make that challenge. And on the women's side last year, they had an incredibly successful season. They went 5-0 in their bracket for their league playoff. Going into the league playoffs, they played RPI, who are a very big, powerful team, a strong unit, and they came up short there. But it gave us a platform and a structure to now build off. So what we did with the men's program 2 years ago, we're now starting to implement those into the women's program. So recruitment opportunities and making sure they have strength and conditioning and medical support. So we're now using the men's model in the women's team. So we're, again, very hopeful and very excited about the next couple of years, particularly on the women's side, because we will see a rapid growth within that team just in the next year or two. And being a Division 2 team, they're starting from a higher, pedestal than the men's. So Division 1 is another really achievable opportunity for the women's, which we're really excited about.
And rugby is one of those interesting spurts where the fall season wraps up. We don't have to wait till the next fall. There's spring teams playing as well. So 1 or 2 highlights for the men's and the women's coming up in this spring, Greg.
Yeah. So obviously with the projection of the men's program has been quite rapid. It's gained a lot of attention. We have some really exciting games coming up this spring. So the fall really plays out in a 15-a-side game. And then the spring kind of breaks down to a 7-a-side game, which is a shorter version of 15s, same size of field, shorter period of time. So it's a lot more of an athlete type sport. We have playoffs on April 1st that will hopefully take us to a national championship on the 29th and 30th of April. And again, that's another national championship final that Siena could be playing in, which we're really excited about. But also at the same time, we're feeding into the narrative with people paying attention to Siena, wanting Siena to be involved. And we now have 2 MLR, which is the professional league system here in the USA. We have 2 curtain raisers for the New York team and the Washington team. So we will go down and we'll play Fordham on February 26th. And then in April 16th, we are going down to play Mount St. Mary's in Washington. So again, 2 really good high profile games for Siena to put ourselves out there and gain some really good exposure. And then on the women's side, again, their 15s is in the fall. And they're more of a participation in the spring as they kind of build the kind of necessaries for that sport, because it's drastically different 7s to 15s. So they have another really good season coming up. They've got some really competitive games scheduled. They'll host their Maria Brown tournament in April as well. So there's, some really important events for the women's, but it's again all about progression and development for their team right now. And they've got some really good opportunities to play good teams as well.
And in the next 7 to 8 minutes, George, I kind of want to shift our focus to the Recruitment Scholarship Fund. We talk about the continued success of the program and how we want to compete at the highest levels. This also means the continued evolution of the programs. Can you provide the audience listening today a little bit of the background around this Rugby Scholarship Fund? Yeah,
definitely. So when we were thrust into Division I, the conversation that a lot of us had with Greg is, what do you need? What kind of resources are going to be required to, as Greg said, not only play and compete, but win in a Division I level against some of the best programs. And from a rugby standpoint, programs that have a storied past being on national TV. So to compete with that, on a real positive note, Greg has gotten a lot of support over the last couple of years from senior leadership at Siena and athletics. So it was really a question of, hey, we've got strength training, we've got support, we've got field access. We're getting a lot of the things we need, but we're going to need 6 5-star type recruits over the next 4 years. Now, the hope is after that, we built our brand. But right now, you're competing, and Greg was just at a tournament this weekend looking at, high school women's rugby, and next to him is standing there is Dartmouth. So when you're competing with the likes of Dartmouth, we're going to have to get aggressive. And so in looking at our recruiting efforts, we identified that we need those folks. And then the question is, so what are the economics that get us there? And obviously a scholarship is going to have to follow a student for 4 years. So when you do the math, it really quickly came to about $750,000, and we probably could use almost $900,000 to support this recruiting over the next, the next 4 years. And that sounded like a big number and an aggressive number as we sat there. But then as you start to break it down, we talked to some alumni who've been very supportive. We had a $250,000 matching gift between now and the end of December. And so I'm happy to report by the end of the year, we had 21 donors and raised over $500,000. So we're off to a great start. The opportunity, looks in sight for us. And obviously we've got direct mail going out. There's been something, as you know, in the Siena magazine with QR codes. There's a great mail piece who I'll show you here, came out with a team back in the early 80s. So we've gotten a lot of calls on that, some of the great faces. And by the way, I'd say probably a good 50 to 60% of the people in this photo still show up. And we see them every year, which says something about the program itself and the individuals that have been a part of it. So the hope is on Giving Day, we're going to fire off and try to close that gap between the somewhere over $500,000 and the $750,000. And again, that's going to give Greg the fuel to allow us to play and like we said, compete and win at that level.
And we've got just about 3 minutes left in today's show. And for those listening who maybe received that mail that went out last week, or they've attended all of the Rugby Alumni weekends, and they want more information on this, George, can you talk a little bit about the different levels of support that we're looking at and maybe where they can go to support that? $100 gift, $25 gift, right? What type of donations are we looking at?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And so we structured this campaign as a 5-year pledge. So obviously it makes it easier from a donor perspective that we don't need to come up with that money all at once. And many of us that are on this call already made our pledges for 5 years, and we've committed to X dollars a year. And that's when they hit the QR code. So I'd encourage them, and they could start the pledge when they feel comfortable. Maybe this isn't the year to start the pledge, but they could do it next year. But we're really hoping for that 5-year commitment. It gives them more time. And quite honestly, it gives us more time to get the funds in. On that note, I just wanted to make a point that we already have $100,000 in the house for people who have already paid their first part of the pledges. And that's important because now Greg is going to have that money this year. So the folks that he's working with right now and talking to, the players and their families, he's going to have those funds to try to push us over the edge with some of those key recruits that will be here in August.
And I want to close out on this one last note. And as always with event planning and fundraising, it's a lot of hand-to-hand combat. And in our records, it shows there's about 1,100 alumni that have played rugby on the men's side and on the women's side. But for anybody listening today that knows of somebody that you've come across in passing that has played rugby alumni that you may not think be in our records that wants to support the scholarship fund, they can email alumni@siena.edu and we can get them in touch and we can get them all of the information that they need. The rugby community, as we have seen today, is broad, it is tight, and we're really looking forward to the 50th celebration come September. For everybody listening today, thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time right here on WVCR 88.3 The Saint.